وكذلك أوحينا إليك روحا من أمرنا ما كنت تدري ما الكتاب ولا الإيمان ولكن جعلناه نورا نهدي به من نشاء من عبادنا وإنك لتهدي إلى صراط مستقيم صراط الله الذي له ما في السماوات وما في الأرض ألا إلى الله تصير الأمور.
Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh, and welcome to the program Muslims in America. The religion of Islam is the fastest growing religion in the world, and a majority of that growth is taking place right here in the United States of America. According to most reliable estimates, there are more than 7 million Muslims living in the United States of America. Muslims have become valuable and vital assets to the American society. So please join me as I travel around America and introduce you, my viewers, to a few of the many Muslims in America. And alhamdulillah, we're joined today by our guest professor of Islamic Studies and Christian Muslim Relations, Ibrahim Muhammad Abu Rabia. Assalamu alaikum.
Wa alaikum assalam.
And welcome to the program.
Thank you for coming here.
Well, thank you for inviting us.
Thank you.
Professor, just tell us a bit about your background in teaching Islamic Studies and how you wind up in this center here and how this center was established.
Let me talk a bit about the center here. This is the oldest center in North America for the study of Islam and Christian Muslim relations. As a matter of fact, the study of Arabic language and Islamic studies began here in 1892, at the end of the 19th century. So that was before Yale University, which is 1 hour away from here, or Harvard, began Arabic and Islamic studies. But back then the intention was an evangelical missionary intention. That's to say, the intention was to train Protestant missionaries to go to the Muslim world to convert Muslims to Christianity. But around 1954-55, the mission of the center changed and it became an academic center.
But let me just ask you, historically, were they having much success with the missionary work in Muslim nations?
No, not in the Muslim world, but you know, the missionaries, let's say the American University in Beirut or Cairo were established by Protestant missionaries who came from this part of the USA. Many of whom came from Hartford, from Princeton, from Harvard, from Boston, whatever. But they did not succeed. As a matter of fact, after a while, their intention was to convert Muslims to Christianity, but after a while they began to focus on the indigenous Christians in the Arab world, like Catholics and Armenians. So there were extreme tension between Catholics and Protestants in the Arab world, and this is well documented in Ottoman Syria or Ottoman Palestine or Ottoman Turkey, between the indigenous Christian communities and in a sense the immigrant Christians who came from this part of the world. But they did not succeed. And that's why, this is one reason why the center became an academic center after 1954. Now, I was the first Muslim professor to be hired here back in 1990.
Professor, before you came here to the Hartford Seminary, what were your experiences teaching positions before you actually arrived here?
Yes, I was teaching at the University of Texas at their Middle East Center for 1 year, but I spent 3 years in Virginia Commonwealth University in Richmond, Virginia. And I obtained my PhD in 1987 from Temple University in Philadelphia, where I had taught as well. One of my, I had two major supervisors who are well known, and the late Ismail Farouqi, who was murdered though. We were students in 1986 in Philadelphia.
Okay, then now you came here. You've been here how long?
I've been here 17 years, since 1990. And this is, as you well know, only one of two centers in the USA currently for the study of Islam and Christian Muslim relations. Ours is the oldest. There is a new one that was set up at Georgetown University in Washington, D.C., where Professor John Esposito and other people work. But ours is the oldest.
Right.
Yeah.
And tell us a bit about your Islamic studies courses and what points you try to...
We have 4 or 5 professors who give courses in Arabic language, different stages of Arabic, as well as in Islamic studies. Basically, what we do what we call traditional Islamic studies, Hadith, Quran, Sharia, early Islamic history. We do Christian-Muslim relations or dialogue, and we do modern Islamic studies. We focus on the modern history of Islam, Islam in the contemporary Muslim world, Islamic movements, and Islamic thought. And after 9/11, there has been a major increase in the number of students here. We have at least, we are a graduate institution. We offer master's degrees or PhD degrees. We don't have undergraduate students, and we have 70 students in the program here, most of whom are Muslim, and most of whom are from the Muslim world. We have lots of students from Turkey, from Syria, from Malaysia, Singapore, and Indonesia, and certain parts of Africa. Yeah.
And when you're teaching about the Muslim-Christian relations, what are some of the points? This is not just for me, maybe for our audience who has need to deal and want to explain Islam to people who are Christian. What are some of the points of commonality you point out between Islam and Christianity?
We offer a wide ranging of courses on the theological similarities between Islam and Christianity, about Islam in North America, about Christian-Muslim relations in the Muslim world. I'll give you an example. I have taught a number of courses on Islam in the Muslim world, Islam and Christian-Muslim relations in the Muslim world. Pakistan as a major Muslim country with 150 million Muslims at least. There are 6 million Christians in Pakistan who are Pakistani Christians, and who are different in terms of religion from the Muslims. But people in the West assume that everybody in Pakistan is Muslim, and everybody is, an extremist because of Pakistan. But 6 million. Indonesia is the largest Muslim country in the world. It's a country of 220 million people, 20 million of whom are Christian. And we in the Western world do not know much about Islam in Indonesia or Christian-Muslim relations in Indonesia. So we teach, the historical similarities, but also the theological similarities, and perhaps the change in religious institutions and communities in the contemporary Muslim world, and the relationship between Christians and Muslims. Of course, some people would say, why don't you do like Jewish, Christian, Muslim, Abrahamic stuff, which is true. But we have to realize that number-wise, most Jews do not live in the Muslim world nowadays. And perhaps beyond Iran, you would not find any Jewish person. There are a few Jews in India, but not many. But in Indonesia or here and there are not many Jews. That's to say that our focus is going to remain Christian-Muslim dialogue, because of the fact that number-wise, throughout history, Christians and Muslims have interacted in different Muslim countries.
Now, do you find that the popularity, maybe not here in the Hartford Seminary, but just across the United States in university programs, that the Islamic study is gaining popularity beyond just Muslims?
Oh, yes, that's a very good question. I mean, there is no doubt that Islamic studies as a field has become very popular in the past 20, 30 years, but in particular after 9/11. First of all, colleges and universities invest in either positions or courses in Islamic studies, but also the Muslim communities in the West are beginning to invest in chairs in Islamic studies. We did not hear about this 20 years ago or 10 years ago. Muslim communities have the money to invest in chairs to teach Islam for non-Muslims and Muslims alike. So Islamic studies as a discipline has attracted so much attention, especially since 9/11.
And what about libraries? Do you find that the quality and the quantity of books about Islam is increasing in university libraries? And
of course. I mean,
libraries?
I have published over 15 books in the English language. On Islamic thought and all of that, and lots of editors from well-known presses contact me to offer them manuscripts, to write books for them. So there is a major demand, and of course for presses they want to make money. So there is a marketing questionnaire and all of that, and they do make money from. If you take the journal, our journal, The Muslim World, that we'll talk about later on, this is the oldest one in North America. We are the owner of that journal, but it is being published by Blackwell Publishers in Oxford, England. And Blackwell Publishers make at least $150,000 a year of this journal. So they are making lots of money because the field has expanded recently, and it has gained so much attention in the world.
You talked about the popularity on books about Islam.
Right.
They're also quite popular, the books which are against Islam and promote a false image about Islam.
There is no doubt that there is a good number of books that are anti-Islamic, books written by such people as Daniel Pipes or Bernard Lewis or other people. But these books, usually are written by people who are not well informed on Islam and the Muslim world, except Bernard Lewis. He's well informed, he knows, but he's a Zionist. Whereas there are lots of other books I have read that are anti-Islamic, are written by journalists who do not know any Islamic language, they do not know any Arabic, they do not know anything about the Islamic world, Islamic history, Islamic theology, about the Quran. They have no clue whatsoever. But they present themselves as the experts on Islam, as Edward Said would say in his major book of 1981 covering Islam. So they are seen as experts in the major mass media in the USA and the West. But after reading their books, I become very much disgusted with what they have to say, because it's mainly, these people are trying to create an international new enemy out of Islam and Muslims. I'm not saying that all people in the Western world are doing that, but there is a certain segment in the journalistic discourse where people, these journalists, are trying to create a new international enemy after the collapse of communism in 1991.
But how does the environment created by these type of books, by the media, by movies, how does that complicate your job in teaching people about Islam and overcoming some of these
stereotypes? As a matter of fact, that does not complicate my job. It makes it much easier because there is a major demand. I think that by and large, American people are fair-minded people and democratic people, and by and large, they want to listen to authentic Islamic voices. I think that this is one of the major lacunas that we suffer from, the lack of articulate Arabic and Islamic voices in American society. And we have enough freedom and enough democracy to express our ideas in this society. But we need to train young Muslim scholars from different Islamic backgrounds who speak different Islamic languages to address these complex issues, especially the relationship between Islam and the West, the Muslim world and the West, because that has become part of the popular discourse in the USA and the West, unlike before. So what we need is to, be prominent in the mass media, in the universities, in the academic and journalistic discourses, be prominent in the movie or film industry, and be prominent in the business industry in the USA. And I think that Muslims are much more aware of this than before, which is a good sign. Yes.
But let me ask you, in terms of Islam over the West and the Middle East, because unfortunately most of the Western nations have demonstrated an ignorance of Arabic culture, of Middle Eastern culture. Do people from the government actually consult you or take time to come to you to find out about countries and things where they're intending to become involved or have some type of relation?
Actually, I always get invited by the State Department, especially in the Far East, in Indonesia, Singapore, Malaysia, and even in Thailand, to go and speak about Islam in America, the Muslims in America, and so on and so forth. And that's very important. I think that, we need to encourage the State Department to expand, to enter into more dialogue with the Muslim world, and to realize that the Muslim world is very important and complex indeed. So the American academia, we get invited so often, like I'm getting tired of invitations. Well, I have not given any advice to the government here. But State Department, I go on their speakers bureau to different Muslim countries to speak about Islam in America and all of that. But in terms of the audience in the USA, American people, I think that...
I'm sorry, Professor, let me just rephrase my question.
Sure.
You go to foreign countries and tell them about Islam in America.
That's right.
But I'm saying here in this country, do people ask you about Islam in the Muslim world?
Yes, American people.
Yeah.
You mean American people or government people?
Government people, I'm asking.
No, well, I went to one conference actually before 9/11, run by the government in Washington D.C. They invited 25 scholars of the Middle East and Islam, and it was a 3-day conference about Islam at the time. That was back in 1998 or so. Did they follow our advice? I have no idea. There's no doubt that U.S. foreign policy is very complex indeed. And it depends on what country we're talking about. And I believe that the U.S. foreign policy has committed major mistakes, especially in the Middle East. Yes.
Now, when you go out to forums and you just speak about Islam in general, What are some of the common points of misconceptions you find always come up?
Well, it's very clear that in the Muslim world per se, especially after 9/11, there has been so much anger, Muslim anger towards the USA and towards the U.S. foreign policy, which I cannot defend, because my job would be to speak about Islam and Muslims in the USA and the complexity of the Muslim communities in North America. Let's say the differences between indigenous Islam and immigrant Islam and all of that. And many Muslims learn about this, because it doesn't mean that Muslims know about the complexity of Muslim religious communities in North America.
But that's an excellent point you raised.
Yeah.
But just tell us a bit about some of the complexities of the Muslim communities here in the U.S.
One major complexity is that when Islam began here, in a sense, if we can trace a beginning for Islam, Islam began here through indigenous African American Muslims who reverted to Islam, who rediscovered their roots back in Africa as well as in Islam. Back in the 19th century, perhaps in the 18th century. Then in the 20th century, we begin to hear about the Nation of Islam and Elijah Muhammad, and that's a well-known story represented in different books. Then we begin to hear in the 1950s about Malcolm X, Haj Abdul Malik Shabazz, and there is a major book by him and a movie about him after his death. So this is extremely important. In addition, in the 1950s and 60s, we have a wave of Muslim students who come from different parts of the Muslim world to the USA to study, and many of them settle here and marry American women and stay here and begin to establish Islamic centers. And it's a very interesting thing to observe the relationship or the dynamics between what I call indigenous Islam and immigrant Islam. I think that we need...
But I'm sorry,
yes,
I need you just to expound a bit on that, about indigenous Islam and immigrant Islam.
Yes, I mean, there's no doubt that to me, when we speak about authentic Islam, authenticity, that indigenous Islam is highly authentic for a number of reasons in this country. First of all, because African American Muslims especially are part of this society, but at the same time they want to follow a different ethic, worldview and religion that is not part of the society, Islam, let's say. So that's why Islam becomes very prominent in their worldview and in this society because of indigenous Islam.
And as I think it goes back to a bit of trying to reclaim their own individual identity. Individual
identity, as well as a major tradition that got lost in the age of slavery. A tradition, not just an individual identity, but the Islamic tradition that is part of Africa, as you know, for several centuries, because many of these slaves came from West Africa or East Africa, and many had been Muslim already, but they lost Islam because of slavery and the pain of slavery. So there had been major historical attempts to reclaim a whole tradition of Islam, but in a new context, in a North American context, in the 19th century, in the 20th century. And this is, to me, it's a very fascinating tradition of Islam that had been reclaimed by African Americans virtually without any external Muslim help. That's to say, help coming from the Arab world or the Muslim world in the 19th century or the 20th century. Now, of course, there's more interaction between what I would call indigenous Islam and immigrant Islam, but this is now, the 21st century.
Now you said immigrant Islam. I mean, can you just give us a brief definition of what you mean?
As you well know, in the USA, no one is sure about the exact number of Muslims. It could be as low as 3 million, as high as 12 million. No one is exactly sure about the exact number. But there's no doubt that a large number of Muslims in this country have immigrated from the different parts of the Muslim world. And I think that a large number of the immigrant Muslims have come from South Asia. That's to say, they have come from India, Pakistan, Bangladesh, Afghanistan, and Kashmir. That's South Asia. For example, we don't have many Muslims in the USA who have immigrated from Indonesia, as an example.
Right.
Or from Malaysia. But we have more from Africa or South Asia, or North Africa or the Middle East, even from North Africa, because many North Africans migrate to Europe, to Spain or France or Germany or Holland. Nowadays we have many young people from Morocco especially and Algeria who come here, but the majority still go to Europe. But we have lots from the Arab world, especially from Egypt, from Syria, from Palestine, Jordan, a few from the Gulf states. We have many students in the USA, but these are not immigrants, so to speak.
How about this matter of immigration? Has it become more difficult after 9/11?
I think that it has become more difficult, but as you well know, the USA has the system of the lottery, where the USA brings like 50,000 people every year from different parts of the world on that lottery. They give them a green card, and for a while they have focused on Morocco. So you have lots of young Moroccan women and men, highly educated, who have a green card and who come here to find jobs in and who immigrate to the USA. And now they are focusing on Algeria, I understand, as well as on Turkey. So there is a focus on the Muslim world as well. But by and large, you know, the rules have become more strict than before 9/11.
Let me just ask you from your experience, the Muslims of the Muslim nations, how do they view the Muslims here in America?
That's a very good question. I think that if you want me to be honest with you, the Muslims, immigrant Muslims, do not know much about indigenous Islam, African American Islam in North America, except the educated ones. And some of us who migrated from the Muslim world, we migrate with our own stereotypes and biased ideas. So some of us would say, oh, well, you know, we don't like black people because they are black, something like that. And this is not Islamic, but that's part of certain cultures that we have to get rid of. But I think that my point here, my argument is that we need to have more dialogue, intra-Muslim dialogue, between African American Muslims and immigrant Muslims. It's happening. Is it happening in a major way, in a wide way, at a high level? I don't think so, but it's happening. But it needs to happen more and more between the different Muslim communities in North America. And I believe that African American Muslims, by and large, are much more comfortable in American society than immigrant Muslims, because they are born here and they speak the language and all of that. So therefore, I believe that immigrant Muslims need their help in order to adjust to American society. At the same time, perhaps African American Muslims need the help of immigrant Muslims in the study of Arabic language and Islam and all of that. So we need to have that interaction for all sorts of reasons from different sides.
Alhamdulillah.
Yeah.
Okay, you told me earlier about your publication here, The Muslim World, journal devoted to the study of Islam and Christian-Muslim relations. So tell us a bit about this publication.
Now, the Muslim World is the oldest journal in the USA in the study of Islam and Christian-Muslim relations. It's a quarterly. It comes out 4 times a year. It began in 1911. In 1911, its major intention had been missionary in nature, that's to say, to convert Muslims to Christianity. But roughly in the 1950s, as I said before, it changed its focus. It became an academic journal. It is an academic journal now. It is open to all scholars from the Muslim world as well as from, you know, any part of the world to write academic articles on any aspect of Islam and Christian-Muslim dialogue. And for example, the issue that you have here, the latest issue, is about Islam in North America. It's a special issue. We have done lots of issues on Islam in North America, Islam in Europe. We have done an issue or 2 on Islam in Turkey, an issue on Islam in Iran, Islam in India and Pakistan, Islam in Indonesia. So we do also special issues. We'd love to do other issues on Islam in the Gulf states or Islam in North Africa or Islam in Africa. So this is an academic journal, and I am the senior editor of that journal. And it is read in 79 different countries in the world. And at least 1,500 institutions subscribe to that journal. And as you know, the institutional subscription rate is very high, but 1,500 institutions in the USA, in Europe, in the Muslim world. I saw the journal in India, in Pakistan, in Saudi Arabia. I was at the King Faisal Foundation, Saudi Arabia. They received that journal. And Imam Abdul Wahab University in Riyadh, they received that journal. And in other Gulf countries as well. It's a well-known journal. And to my mind, it is still the only journal devoted to Islam in North America. As you know, in North America, we have lots of journals devoted to Arabic studies, the Middle East, Middle Eastern history. But in terms of Islamic studies, this is still the only journal, academic, refereed journal devoted to Islamic studies in the world.
Yeah. Professor, let me just ask you from your knowledge what you know about the growth of Islam in America. Because for this program, we've traveled around to many cities. We can see many new masjids. many new faces. And I have to add, even we were in Alaska, and we found the indigenous native Alaskan people accepting Islam. So I think the face of Islam is changing from the traditional African American. I think we found people from every ethnic group coming to Islam.
I'll give you an example about our town, Hartford, Connecticut. When I first came here in 1990, we had only one masjid. Nowadays we have 4 masjids. So that testifies to the growth of the Muslim community in Hartford, both immigrant and indigenous. And you know, no one has exact statistics about the number of Muslims, but there is a debate nowadays after 9/11 that after 9/11 there has been more conversion to Islam than before 9/11. And this could be true. That's a very interesting thesis. It could be true. Has it been proven in a scientific way? I have no idea. But there's no doubt that Islam is attracting the attention, especially after 9/11, in negative and positive ways. And it seems to me that it becomes our job as Muslims in North America to present the positive dimensions of Islam, and there are many, and the positive dimensions of the Muslim world, and above all to talk about the interaction between Islam and modernity, Islam and the West. I remember, you know, there is a major alim from Turkey by the name of Badi'uz-Zaman Said Nursi, who died in 1960. 100 years ago, when he wrote his major book, what we call Risalatun Nur, the Treatise of Light, he wrote in the first volume that Islam, that was back in 1918, almost 100 years ago, Islam is pregnant with Europe and Europe is pregnant with Islam. And I would say that Islam is pregnant with the West and the West is pregnant with Islam. And therefore it is very crucial for us to talk about Muslim-Western dynamics, the fact that Islam is a major religious fact and phenomenon in Western societies nowadays. This phenomenon is not going to disappear. And that Americans and Westerners, you know, like this phenomenon because of religious and cultural diversity in those societies. And I think that there is enough margin of freedom for the Muslims to educate themselves, to build their own educational systems, to build their own Islamic centers. And above all, to my mind, it's very important to have an intra-Muslim dialogue, especially between African American Muslims and immigrant Muslims. But above all, it's very important to have a dialogue between the Muslims of North America and the Muslim world as well, not just an intra-Muslim dialogue. That's to say, we need the Muslim world too, in the same way that the Muslim world needs us as well. We need to study Arabic and Islamic studies and other Islamic languages. I would encourage my kids to go and spend, my kids know Arabic, because they do spend some of their time overseas in an Arab country. That's very significant for us. We should not be isolated from the Muslim world as well.
Right, and Professor, just one point you mentioned. Many people I talk to say we can't tell you exactly how many Muslims there are in the United States. I mean, we have people of all different types of profession, engineering, we have mathematicians, we have so many people. So I mean, what do you think the Muslims need to do? Because I think we really need to know, the world needs to know, America needs to know how many Muslims are here exactly.
Well, sometimes that's very hard, but I think that to me it's not a matter of number, but to me it's a matter of engaging yourself in the larger American society while preserving your own religious identity in this society. And I don't see a contradiction between that.
Right.
That Muslims by and large have the freedom to preserve their identity, to enhance their religious identity, while being Americans at the same time. And I think that we have to encourage ourselves to be part and parcel of this society, not just part and parcel of our closed religious communities, but of this society at large. Right. So that's what's more significant to me than the number. Of course, the number, of course, is significant too, but no one can, come up with the exact number of Muslims in North America.
Right. Yeah. Okay, Professor, I really thank you for spending some time with us.
Thank you.
But I make it a habit to ask all of my interviewees, as this program is called Muslims in America, from your life in America, from your travels in America, and what you know about Islam in America and American society, tell me, what is your outlook for the forecast for the future of Islam in America?
That's a very good question. I think it depends on all sorts of factors. I think that, there is no doubt that 9/11 had been a tragic event in the history of contemporary America as well as in the history of the contemporary world. But I think that even within tragic events, we have positive consequences. And one of the major positive consequences of this is the progressive engagement of the Muslim community with American society. Now, Muslims are well aware than before of their need to go out and speak to Americans about Islam and the Muslim world, Islamic ethics, Islamic life and thought, about the Holy Quran, about the Hadith, about the history. So there is more awareness among the Muslim community, but also among the different American communities of the need to understand and to know about Islam and Muslims. This is one. Second, Americans are more, by and large, at the popular level, as well as at the academic level, have become more open to know about Islam than before. Of course, there are some people, certain segments, American society is very complex. There are certain forces that want to create a new international enemy. I'm not saying that all Americans think that way. No, that's not true. Or that even all Americans in the government think that way. That's not true. Because the American political elite or system is quite complex and multifaceted. But the point here is that I think that we have a major space to maneuver as Muslims, to articulate ourselves as American Muslims who come from different backgrounds, either an indigenous Islamic, African Islamic background or immigrant background. We have to articulate Islamic space in North America and negotiate the relationship between our Islamic identity and our American identity, because that's a major. And I think that this space is quite open. I think that by and large, American Muslims want America to stay democratic and open and free society for all of its citizens. They don't want to be cornered or to be placed on the spot where they would be treated as, like let's say the Japanese were treated in World War II. They want to be an engaged part of American society and American civil society and American political system.
Yeah. Well, Professor, thank you very much for spending some time with us.
Thank you.
Alhamdulillah, I hope that our viewers were able to benefit from some of the insight provided by the professor about Islam in America. And I hope you continue with me as I travel around the United States of America and introduce you to the Muslims of America. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa